G'day. Everybody wants to get into the paddock. That's the area that sits behind the garages at all tracks except Monaco. That's a bit of a quirky one, but I'll go into that later. How do you get into the paddock? It's not easy, but then again, it's not impossible. It's a working area. Mostly it comprises team members, drivers, media, FIA, F1 officials, but over the past 7 or so years, things have really opened up. So let's go through how you could get into the F1 paddock. Bernie Eccleston, when he ran F1, kept the paddock a very closed affair. It was all very top secret. But Liberty, when they bought the business, they saw a real commercial opportunity to open it up. And to be fair, it's probably even got to a stage now where it's a little too busy with spectators, with fans, with corporate guests, especially on Saturdays and Sundays. So to get into the paddock, first up, you'll need a pass. These are electronic, and these are provided by the FIA. Every team gets an allocation of these passes. Mine's a full season pass, but a lot of photographers have just a race-by-race pass, so they'll get one different pass for every single race. This pass gets you through the swipe gates. If you don't have a pass, you don't get in. And do drivers need a pass? Yes, although a lot of drivers do forget their passes, and it's not uncommon for them to squeeze past in this manner. With a pass, you can access the paddock, which is this area, or sometimes you can access pit lane as well. But you can't just wander into garages and have a look unless you are invited. And then there is no photography from the rear of the car. Not even corporate guests who stand up the back of the garage can take photos or video looking that direction. And that's because the teams are quite secretive about the engines in their cars. Yes, you'll see drivers wandering around and celebrities, sometimes with security, sometimes without. It just depends on who they are and how busy that paddock is. And for seeing celebrities, best day is Saturday and Sunday, and normally after qualifying or after the race. The mechanics spend most of their time in the garages, although they'll head back across the paddock to the team's hospitality. Also in the paddock, you'll find team personnel, PR people, media like us, social media content creators, hospitality staff, security, F1 and FIA personnel, but not marshals typically. Yes, you'll see them in pit lane, but they don't wander around the paddock. A lot of people ask me if I can get them a paddock pass. Well, we don't see tickets. We don't see other passes. We get issued one pass, and that lasts me for the whole year. And if you're wondering what that costs nothing. FIA provides media passes to people who they think will do a great job of promoting their sport for free. And no, I don't need anyone to carry my bags for me. Thank you very much for the offer. I get a lot of that. There are ways for you as a fan to get access to the paddock, and I'll go into that in detail a little bit more. But let's have a look for a start. If you want to work in the paddock, probably the easiest way to get access to the paddock is via hospitality jobs. And there are a lot of them. Every team has a catering company. For Mercedes, they have Doe & Co., huge international company based out of Austria. For McLaren, they have Karl-Heinz Hauser, who is a chef and has his own business, and he provides the catering. Every team will have an organisation. If you want to work in that field, you'd need to get onto those companies and apply. Sometimes they advertise for jobs, but from what I've seen, a lot of it's word of mouth. So if you happen to know someone that is already employed in the paddock, you could certainly ask them how they could introduce you to the person that makes that decision. You might think the job is quite glamorous and glitzy. From what I've seen, it's just plain hard work, although you do get to meet some interesting people. A lot of those people that do those jobs have to work 12 and 14-hour days and come back-to-back races. Often they'll work all day on a Sunday, then pack up until crazy hours, then take an early morning flight to arrive at the other end, a little bit of sleep, and it's back to work. So don't think you're going to be there for a jolly. And what would the employers be looking for? Well, certainly experience in hospitality, attitude, hard working, but you do get free gear, you get food and drink, accommodation and travel. And if you're young and keen to see the world, this is a great way to do it. Another question I get is, do any of the teams hire locally? And from what I've seen, no, not normally. But at last year's Las Vegas Grand Prix, one caterer had to hire hundreds of local staff because their staff were turned away at the airport. They had an issue with staff's visas. So a local labour hire firm, I believe, in Los Angeles, was given the contract to find something like 700 staff in a few days, and at a much higher cost than the staff that they were bringing from overseas. Some of those staff did end up in the paddock. The easiest way to get access to the paddock is to just pay, and there are certain tickets that allow you access. For a start, you can buy packages with the individual teams. I've done that back in 2016. I bought a package at Abu Dhabi with Red Bull. That got me access to the paddock. I couldn't walk around in the paddock all day on my own, but I got various tours, and I had seats above the garage in pit lane. What did I pay for that? Oh, I think it was about probably $8,000 back then. But today, if you want free reign of the paddock over one day, and that's pretty much all you can get a single day, you'd take a Legends package with F1 experiences, and you'll need to be, well, cashed up, because I think it's in the order of $20,000. But for one day, you can roam the paddock at your will. Now that gives you the opportunity to pretty much see every driver if you're happy to stand out there all day. And with that package and a number of others, not only do you get access to the paddock for some period, you also get access to pit lane for the podium ceremony. So you'll be underneath the podium getting sprayed with champagne along with us and the teams. And that's something you won't forget in a long time. But what if you don't have the money? Well, first, know that the team have a number of passes that they can hand out to guests. And typically that will be a situation where they'll give it to person A for an hour, and then the person will leave the paddock and they'll get that pass back and they'll give it to someone else. So they can rotate that pass through as many people as they want throughout the day. That's the sort of ticket that you should be aiming at. But how do you get one? Well, for a start, you'll have to stand out from the crowd. But the teams do have people that go actively looking for people that should be brought into the paddock. And you might remember that young boy, after Kimi Räikkönen crashed, the Ferrari PR people found that youngster just by looking at the television coverage, actually brought him and his family into the suite where he met his idol. Yes, he was lucky, as were his mum and dad. You might remember these Pink Panthers, avid fans of Esteban Ocon, and oftentimes the team would grab them, take them into the garage and even out the back into the paddock. They weren't allowed to wander around the whole day, but it did get them into the area that they wanted to see. This family often gets brought into the paddock, and the best day to get a paddock pass is probably Thursday, because on a Thursday in most places there is a pit lane walk where 3-day ticket holders get the chance to spend 30 minutes walking pit lane. They have PR people standing out the front of the garage, and if they see somebody interesting, they'll often remove that rope, let you in, have a chat, and then there's an opportunity for you to perhaps go out the back in the paddock. And look at these guys, Valtteri Bottas t-shirts, very simple, I don't know, maybe cost them a few hundred Aussie dollars, and it's resulted in them getting into the Melbourne paddock. And whether the team or Valtteri saw them, either way, they were invited in. I met a guy on a train in Suzuka going back some years ago now, and he mentioned the fact that he was doing a blog. He was travelling the world, going to every single race. And one of the teams got wind of this, so they actually invited him to come into the paddock for, a period, perhaps half a day. If you can get the attention of teams doing something interesting, they will often not take pity on you, but they will certainly embrace you for a certain period of time. And yes, you may get a chance to meet your favourite driver or team principal. I have read a couple of stories about, I got into the paddock with a fake pass. Well, I doubt that very much. Look, I've seen people sneak in. In Melbourne's a case in point. There was a gap between two fences, and I did see a kid jump that flower bed and make it into the paddock, but I don't think he lasted too long. But if you have a fake pass, you might be able to fool a human. But remember, F1 passes have very detailed lanyards, and they are electronic. And you have to swipe through a gate, and no amount of cajoling a human will get you in there. The other thing is that on those swipe gates, when you swipe in, your photo comes up, and the FIA staff monitoring these gates have to look at the person and the photo as they come in, and if it doesn't match up, you're out. I lost my pass once, and I'm thinking anyone who picks this up and tries to get in is pretty much going to be stopped at the gate. If they're really quick into the paddock before I get a chance to contact the FIA and say, hey, my pass has been lost or stolen, in which case that pass is rendered useless, and when it beeps, FIA people will come up and grab that pass and say, no, you're not coming in, and then they'll probably do some investigation and realise that you've picked it up. And the other thing is the FIA doesn't leave it to local people to monitor those swipe gates, and that's because in particular in the Arab countries where you might have wealthy princes or well-known people coming in, they might say, right, I want to come in here and I don't have the right. And a local might be intimidated and let them in. Instead, the FIA brings their own staff from mostly Austria, and those people are not going to be intimidated by a prince or any high-up person in a foreign country. They're just going to simply say, no, you can't come in here. The other thing is security wanders the paddock all the time. And these people are attuned to looking for people without passes. And on one occasion in Bahrain, I came out of the media centre and you didn't need to swipe out of that. And I only got about 150 metres into the paddock and someone's come up to me and said, "Where's your pass?" So I know that they're switched on in terms of keeping the people out. And I've seen people get kicked out, particularly on a Sunday after the race where it's hell busy. Security will often be marching people out of that paddock. Now, what about celebrities? How do they get into the paddock? Well, often they're invited by teams, often invited by the FIA or Formula One, and some are paid. I mentioned this on a previous video, but yes, they might be paid with airfares, accommodation, cash, yes. What cash? I don't know, it depends how big they are, but someone like a Cristiano Ronaldo or a Lionel Messi, who have huge followings on social media, might be seen as a very valuable target for a team or Formula One to have in that paddock. They may well be paid an appearance fee. I see plenty of influencers in the paddock, and they don't have to have a crazy Cristiano Ronaldo following. But obviously, if you're a Khaby Lame or a Mark Rober or Casey Neistat, you've got a far better chance of being invited than if you are a 10,000 follower person. But that's not to say that that 10,000 follower influencer would not get a pass. Perhaps not a Sunday race pass, maybe a Thursday pass when things are a little quieter. And I imagine that part of the deal is, yes, we'll get you into the paddock, but we'd like you to produce some content. And their license too is different. With my video license, which has only come about in the last year, and I've mentioned this I think on a couple of occasions, I have to be the subject of the video. In other words, I have to present to camera. I can't be wandering around videoing Lando and Lewis going to and from the paddock. I can't do anything that shows the track or the cars. And there are a few other riders as well. But with influencers, they're different. They don't get those same restrictions. And the final opportunity is passes that drivers have. I'm not sure if it's all drivers, but certainly a number of them have access to passes for each race. And that allows them to bring their mum, their dad, friends, whatever. But occasionally they'll have one spare, or maybe two. And if you happen to become friendly with them, perhaps you meet them in an airport and get on well with them, you might just say, is there any chance of a guest pass for one day of the race? There's no guarantee they'll say yes, but if you don't ask, you may never know. Are there any dress restrictions? No. I've not seen anything that says you have to wear this, although I imagine that this might be pushing the boundaries, but hey, I've seen all sorts of things in the paddock that clearly raise some eyebrows, but have not been turned away. I love working in the paddock at F1. It is very much the epicenter of the sport. Some paddocks are better than others. Monaco is a shocker because there's a very small area for people to gather. Those motorhomes are jammed in, and the drivers have a long walk from the paddock to the garage and they have to come over this bridge. Probably the best paddock, I'd say Bahrain. It's huge, and at night it absolutely sparkles. There's plenty of room, and you can normally find a clean shot of a driver in there. Australia is a leafy paddock, but it is quite tight, and getting a clean shot of a driver there is far more of a challenge. The Japanese paddock is great because our media centre's smack bang in the heart of it. The China paddock, way too big and soulless. Imola is compact. Canada's along the side of the river. Barcelona, Austria and Monza are typical paddocks. The UK is slightly bigger and a bit more spacious. Hungary's okay, it's getting a spruce up this year. Spa is the only paddock that's over 2 levels. Miami and the Netherlands are like Monaco, where they have their hospitality area a long way from the garages. Singapore's beautiful to look at, but bloody hot. Azerbaijan is a paddock that's set up just for the race. Brazil is bizarre. It's all undercover and very tight. Austin, Las Vegas and Mexico are similar. The Doha paddock is unusual because we have these magnificent digital signs along all of the hospitality suites. And finally, Abu Dhabi has a glorious paddock that just shines at night. Now, I figure a handful of you will take this information on board and actually get into the paddock. Perhaps you'll have grabbed the attention of someone that has the power to get you in, or maybe you'll stump up for one of those packages. But if you do get into the paddock and you see me, I'd love you to come up and tell me that this video was of some use to you. Now, thank you to all those people who bought one of my bucket hats. They were sent yesterday, if you're watching this video upon release, from Perth, and they'll be speeding their way around the world. All of them sold out in, I think it was 4 weeks. Will I be doing any more? Not this year. I'll be doing a new design next year, and you'll be able to order them via my website. But certainly you can head to my website down here, kimillman.com, for F1 photo books, wall art, and prints signed by F1 drivers. Thank you for watching, and stay passionate. For the best